I every time I'm watching a podcast or something, I often skip the intros.
For
And
sure.
I would
Me as
notice
well.
you do that too. I noticed that
Yeah,
I think we're
100%.
we're not alone in it. There's like a peak where it says most viewed section, and it's oftentimes is because people are clicking past the intro.
Yeah.
So I kind of just said, okay, if I don't do it, and Tyler's not watching it, and I'm not watching it, and everybody else is not watching it, we just jump right into like an interesting point in the conversation.
Rick, who are we doing it for anyways? We're doing it for us.
Yeah. It's for us. No, it's for sure. It's for us. I hope other people enjoy it, but actually, it just starts. It starts from here. It starts from here.
It's
So
for me and
okay,
my mom.
it's for me and yeah, it's for me and my mom. It makes us happy. So okay,
That's right.
where do I start? I know that you said you work at two different businesses. I know REC
Yeah,
Canada. That's how I saw you, a portfolio manager at REC Canada. Am I right about
that's right.
that?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I think I was watching the Jazz to Car podcast, and that's
Yeah.
where I saw you, and you were talking about Batman, which I'm gonna get into because it's
Oh, for
like
sure.
I just put up a Superman podcast. Like
I
my
saw that.
you saw that, my first
Yeah.
solo show. I don't usually do solo ones, but I cared so much about this Superman idea that I was like, okay, I'm gonna talk about this for 45 minutes. Um, so but you started out, I think, as a server. Like, how did you go from server to portfolio manager and essentially real estate investor?
Yeah.
Entrepreneur in a couple of different businesses. How does that journey go?
You know what? Really, it just where you are now and where you were, call it for me, a decade ago are two totally different places. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have pictured myself in this position and doing this type of work. And I think it contributes to kind of my overall view of life. And I guess you can contribute that to entrepreneurship, which is have a clear mind, be open to trying and letting in new experiences and just be true with the experiences yourself. And what I mean by that is I started off as a server. I was very fortunate that I ended up, funny enough, picking up that shift that day when I served Jazz as well as Simeon, who are the owners of REC Canada, which is the a real estate firm that I've been working with now for a decade. And I must have did something right, Rick, because I through the day and serving, and I'm not sure if you've worked in the service industry in the past, but as a server, you're doing like 20 things at the same time, and I must have done something right when I was serving that table because when they were paying their bill, they asked me, overall, like, what was it that I was looking to do in the in the future, and at that time I was, call it 23, 24, and I didn't have that answer. But I always wanted to explore real estate. I moved around a lot as a kid, and I just always had a knack to, or a desire to venture out and to see homes, and thinking that that's the passion. Side note for anyone who's aspiring to be a realtor, seeing homes is great, but that's not even close to what the actual role in the job is. That's just an addition to. But going back, I got asked to come upstairs after I was done my shift, and I'm not really sure who they were. They left me their business card, so I googled them, and I went up and I had a conversation. It seemed like something I was open to. I started off as their assistant, and did a lot of running around as a lot of assistants do. And naturally, I'm very fortunate because of who I'm working around and working with, that I was able to grow with the company. I now have my own. I've been able to carve or create my own lane within the organization, and now I run a team of portfolio managers and building overall short-term and long-term plans. But that really started, Rick, with just being the type of person that was warm and just asked the right questions, and that's how I was able to really get my foot in the door.
That is funny, like that, how conversation seems to open up a lot of doors. Like if you're I'm not sure what you said or how you asked or how you acted, but I'm betting that you'll be willing to have the conversation with the person there at the table and make them feel comfortable. I guess must have made some huge difference. They literally gave you their card and asked you to just come and have a meeting
Come,
with them.
yeah, come upstairs, and obviously they had a need in their organization, and at that time it was just for someone to help manage or partially just help their day-to-day operations of themselves for
Hmm.
themselves. And I was just open to it. I was one thing I would say is never try to come in with firm expectations. Always be able to bend and to be malleable of sorts to be molded into certain types of roles and responsibilities. And it was just right time, right place, and I kept my mind open, which is great.
There does seem to be a time and a place for things. It's just like obviously the right place for you at that time was working at that restaurant, and then
But
that
yeah,
shifted to working as an assistant, and then building up from there. I like what you're saying too. I find that it reminds me of a Zen philosophy. It's called the beginner's mind, which is essentially that leaving your uh essentially keeping your cup open for that thing. Like you might be an expert
yeah.
in the thing, but you still have to keep an open mind. If you're a master, you can be like, okay, what's actually happening right now? Is there something new in this situation that maybe I'm not understanding? And keeping yourself open to these new opportunities, new ideas, new stuff. So that's fantastic, absolutely
and
fantastic.
I've and I've learned throughout the years, because as I was growing and working on my skill set and my craft, which is help working with investors for real estate and building them that overall kind of short-term and long-term planning. We could talk about that if that's kind of direction. But
Yeah.
one thing that I've learned that I did, but I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, is I was asking questions and saying less. And when you like, it's very important. And it's something it's a skill set that you should use in all types of entrepreneurship, which is like, for example, if I'm asking you a question, I'm asking you that question and waiting for that answer from you, not filling in the silence or the in between parts. Because the in between, for example, let's say I didn't have an understanding of income properties. I would just ask them or hear their conversations and just take notes. And little by little, through reviewing the notes and asking more questions and saying less, I was just naturally, growing and expanding my skill set.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's true. I think
Yeah,
sometimes
say less.
when you get nervous, you talk too much. You know, you might find yourself people are anxious a lot these days, I think, and you find yourself talking more than you need to. I think that happens to me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm projecting on everybody, but that probably happens to me where I'm
Oh,
talking too
it
much.
happens to me. So
It
yeah.
does? Okay, well, you're
Oh,
talking
for
about real
sure.
estate. So I think I'm essentially at the bottom of the barrel on the knowledge base of real estate. So when it comes to real estate investing, what you do, where do you suggest a person who's at the bottom of the barrel starts? Or like, how would they utilize,
Yeah.
your services as well?
That's a fantastic question. So what I would do overall, like if I was starting off and wanting to get into real estate purchasing for myself, like to live in, or for myself as an investor, it's really important to understand what the right questions are, to ask yourself. What is it that you're trying to accomplish and to get out of, your 5-year purchasing plan or your 10-year purchasing plan. And I always start with, being around people that, have investment, pieces in their portfolio, and asking them how they started. But if this is a conversation like, you being a new investor and wanting to sit down, we have a program called the Real Estate Action Plan. And essentially what it is, it'll take probably usually about 20 minutes, where I learn more about who you are, you learn more about, some of our services, but more or less that takes like 5 minutes. The big substance of that conversation is me asking you some of these questions that I would ask myself as an entry level investor, and having a brain dump of sorts, and really just verbalizing what it is that you want to accomplish. And I think fundamentally, as an investor for real estate, you need to understand what is it that you get out of a traditional active investment. And active investments to me are either like income properties, like duplexes, triplexes, something with like 5 or more doors, multifamily, commercial opportunities, or pre-construction opportunities, ones where you're buying from the builder. That encompasses as active investments in my mind. And with active investments, there are 4 main categories. that you actually achieve every time you close on a property, you rent out, you make your mortgage payment, regardless of what asset type it is, either like a multifamily or a commercial duplex, single family home, whatever that asset class is, regardless, you're getting four main breakdowns on your return on investment. The first is your principal paydown or your principal recapture. What that is, Rick, is as you're making your mortgage payment, you're paying two things. You are paying interest and principal. Interest we can't do anything about. That's the price to play the game and to be able to be into that investment. So we're going to shop that for a second. But principal, as tenants are paying you the rent and you're making your mortgage payments, or if it's your primary residence, as you're making your mortgage payments, you're lowering the balance on your mortgage. And you have the ability through principal recapture or principal paydown to either have creative financing structures to pull out that equity, or when you sell, you're able to capitalize on the difference of your mortgage balance and what the value of that home is. So that's principal recapture. The second one is cash flow. Cash flow, quite simply, is gross rents minus all of your expenses. What do you get out of that net, monthly or yearly? That's cash flow. Third is passive appreciation. Passive appreciation is how does the value of your property increase based off of the area that your home is located in. So this is based off of more external factors, transit development, population growth, employment infrastructure, more people coming into an area. So that's passive appreciation. And then the last one is active appreciation, which is the other side of the coin. What does the work you do to the property increase the value of it? So for example, you go and buy something with an unfinished basement. You put in $100,000 to finish the basement, add a kitchen to it, and the value's increased by, call it $300,000. Based off of your analysis on, specific, and this is just rough numbers, but specifically on duplexes in that area. If you finish the basement, they're worth $300,000 more than what you purchased it for, or what the current value of the property is. That's active appreciation. So again, you get all four of those categories, out of your active investments. But it's important to understand what is more important to you. And the two that play a tug of war of sorts, and the ones you have to understand, which is what is more important, is cash flow versus passive appreciation. Markets that offer better cash flow, those are markets that offer little to no or little to slow passive growth. Markets that offer better passive appreciation plays, like you're in Montreal, I'm in Toronto, those are more passive appreciation types of locations. Those are markets that offer little to no cash flow. And that's the very first question I would ask, which is, as an investor, what am I trying to get out of the next investment? What is more important to me? And do you want to guess what the majority of investors do say when I ask that question?
Oh, wow. I think I wonder if they say cash flow. Like
They do.
They do? Okay,
Right.
yeah, I'm thinking they probably do, but I wonder if that's true. If they're fooling themselves, on that or not. But if they actually want cash flow more often, I would assume. But tell me why.
The majority of answer. So it's because fundamentally, other than the overall idea that if you put money into your property every single month, it's a bad investment. There is that that ideology, and I can understand it, especially if you're using this property within the next 5 years to offset your income. Like if you're looking to retire and just you use the proceeds of the property for your overall kind of living expenses, then cash flow is so important, right? No matter how much equity you have built in, unless you sell it, and without an actual 9-to-5 job, it's hard to pull out that money through like a refinance or a home equity line of credit. You're going to go through cash. You're going to want cash flow. But really, like I would say that the second question is why cash flow, if that's the reason. And if it's something that you're not looking to put money in every single month, you're actually not looking for cash flow. What you're looking for is you're looking for passive appreciation, but with cash flow neutral as a requirement.
Gotcha.
So that's a passive appreciation. It's just more kind of as you ask yourself more questions, it really just kind of unravels, and you're gonna. I feel like the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Have you seen that meme where it's like he's looking like this, where it's all the different kind of pinups? I've never seen it, but I see that meme sometimes.
Okay.
I feel like as you ask yourself questions, you're like, what do I actually want? But you're gonna get a brain dump. You're gonna get some mess, and then after that, you're gonna kind of really see what's more important to you, and then from there, it's just looking out to the market and seeing what's right. But that's how I would take an aerial view approach of building that overall plan.
Okay, so starts to break things down. At first, yeah, I could see how that would be confusing too for somebody because you think you want a certain thing. Yeah, I want something that's giving me a major cash flow right out the jump. But yeah, if it's cash flow neutral, so it means you're not losing essentially constantly, but you have this passive growth, that could be very interesting as well, right? Because over time you haven't had to do as much. Maybe you haven't
Yep.
had to put as much effort in, and there's an opportunity cost there, right? And
Yeah.
so maybe that's helping you. So that's pretty cool. You know, I I'll say this too. Whenever I go on Instagram or any kind of social media at this point, a lot of this might be the nature of the social media beast, I guess, but I see a lot of negative news. Like it's people going, okay, the real estate market's crazy right now, and this is happening and that's happening. Here's a problem, there's a problem. I know that in places like Toronto and Vancouver, particularly, they talk about rising prices all the time. I hear like for a few years, people are talking about crashes. This is a possibility of a market crash. So, what are your thoughts on handling? I guess I'm not asking about a specific problem, being that I'm not like knowing a lot about it, but parsing through some of this negative information, maybe getting to some of the positives, because usually on the back of a
Yeah.
negative there's some kind of positive actually opportunity that's there. And how to maybe even parse your input that you're taking in, because it oftentimes seems to skew towards the negative. This is a lot
Oh,
of
you just
questions
cut
I
out a
think
little bit
all at
there.
once. Oh, did I
Yeah.
cut a little
So
bit?
yeah,
Yeah.
but I did hear the overall question, and you are right, especially with what's going on right now with the state of the market. And we could talk about interest rates. You know, we're both Canadian, so we could talk about overall fundamentally what interest rates are doing to the everyday purchaser.
Yeah.
But I think you got to scale back the challenges even before that. And we started to see a really big run up. Like I've been in this industry for 10 years, and Rick, I've seen double digit growth for the majority, like as in like 12 to 14% per year growth in real estate values, you know, for the majority of the time I've been licensed and helping investors. And that fundamentally to me is a problem. It really is, because it makes things unaffordable very quickly. Like for example, like when I first started, you can find, turnkey duplexes, in the greater Toronto area in the mid sixes, 700s, and now you can't find anything under a million. And that fundamentally to me, because I'm a young Canadian, that is a problem. And we can go over macro challenges like supply issues. Really, one of the main challenges is how long it takes for units to actually come onto the market, new construction wise. It takes for a high rise development, it takes 10 years from idea to application to pre-construction sales to shovel in the ground to actually completing. It takes 10 years. And those are units we need desperately now to help with some of the supply constraints. And then, when it comes to navigating, because you are right, there are investment opportunities for everyone, but I do personally take a more conservative approach in regards to my number crunching. Like I am very strict when I run numbers for our investors as well as myself personally. And I do not think that the next decade, so the next 10 years overall in Canada, but really on markets that I look at, like the greater Toronto area, I do not think we're going to see the decade that we just saw. I do not think that we're going to see double digit growth per year, no matter what I'm reading right now, between the lines from Bank of Canada, from other people a lot smarter than I am, who are projecting, some really strong returns once interest rates drop. I personally don't think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see in stable markets between 5 to 7% per year growth. And fundamentally, actually, Rick, like that's a sweet spot. Like in prime markets, we want to see 5 to 7% growth, because we're going to have these cyclical ups and downs very, very, very harshly. And it's going to hurt a lot of people that buy on the top, which we're seeing now. And we don't want to see that. I don't want to see it. And it's going to affect mostly, honestly, young Canadians anyways. And that's the type of, the Canadians that I actually don't want to see, because it's hard, right? We've gone through what four? We've gone through four recessions since the '90s. Usually, it's a once in a lifetime recession we've seen four times, and
Yeah.
it's to me, I personally think you have to be very, very conservative with your numbers moving forward. Don't bank on the market making you a millionaire,
Mm.
because fundamentally it's probably going to happen, right? With the supply issues, and you're still going to probably get some stable passive appreciation. But don't just bank on that. And where I think overall the market's going to go, and I've actually never said this to anybody, but this is something that I have late nights thinking about sometimes. And so you're the first to hear about this, Rick. But
Fantastic. I'm
um,
excited.
so I think if you actually look at an overall 100-year graph of Canadian real estate values, every decade the values double. So, let's say in the 70s, the average cost of real estate was 200,000. In the 80s, it was 400,000. Rough numbers, right? But right now in the Greater Toronto area and Vancouver, Greater Vancouver area, the average home is over $1 million. We're actually in the Greater Toronto area, we're like 1,050,000 or so. Now, if we look at the trend, that means by 10 years of this time, 2034, 2035, we should be at a $2 million average. And I personally don't think we're going to be there.
Mm.
And the main reason why I don't think we're going to be there in a decade is because the purchaser pool who can actually afford and be approved for a $2 million purchase is significantly less than the purchaser pool for the million. And I actually think that we're going to see that $2 million average, or 1.8 to $2 million average, by 2040 in the Greater Toronto area. And I might be wrong, but that's what I personally think. And then fundamentally, the question needs to be asked, what types of opportunities are right at that time then, for the investor and for the purchaser? And what I think is the right investment at that point are opportunities, Rick, where you can add or change the asset type. So for example, let's say you're buying a detached single family home, a bungalow. The opportunity at that point, when we start to see lagging appreciation, because I think at that 1.82 million, we're going to see like very slow incremental growth. So we're going to have like 2-year increases, 1-year decrease, 3-year increase, 2-year decrease. So the values aren't going to change too much. So then the opportunity is, I think, like buying a single family home and converting it to a 3-plex, a 3-unit, because now you're changing the asset type. And now you're elevating yourself or you're elevating that property to a different type. And I think that's the investments that people will look at in the early 20, well, we're looking at it now, but like more focused on it in like 2032 to 2040.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, yeah, and I think that sounds kind of accurate to me, because I know that there's a lot of people kind of you see a lot of underbidding these days, I think, in real estate too, where people are like, okay, well, I'm not going to ever be able to afford that, so let's just see if they'd be willing to take something less, or
Yeah,
maybe it's an
you have the
inflated price.
ability to negotiate for sure right now.
Yeah,
You do.
you do. Okay, well, that's pretty cool to know. Oh, and not to
It's
throw
what we
you.
need to see. We need to see that.
That's awesome.
Honestly, as a market, like, and as a buyer, like we can't have, for again a decade I've been helping buyers and investors, the majority of time we'd find a perfect, even for like people looking to live there for their primary residence, we find the perfect home that checks off all of our boxes. We it's the right location, close to transit, close to highway, whatever they're within budget, with it, whatever their due diligence is, their checklist. We do our research, we get the offer prepared, we get their draft ready, and then I get a call from a listing agent and letting us know that we have to compete with 25 other purchasers. Rick, your plan is out the window. You close your eyes, you hope that you hit the right price so you can negotiate a little bit on closing dates.
Mm.
And that's not sustainable. And we're starting to see it shift the other way, where we can finally negotiate overall in Canada as purchasers a little bit more. And it is a breath of fresh air. It really is.
Oh, that's awesome. So,
Yeah.
okay, not to throw you off too much, but can you move around a little? I feel like I'm hearing a little bit of a click or something when you
Oh,
move, like,
yeah.
move your hands. Like, try moving your hands and talk a little bit. Okay, now I'm.
Hello, 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 hello. It might be the fan
It could
a
be. I
little
don't know.
bit. Do you want me to?
think we're
You want me
good.
to? Wait,
It's
are we
it's
good?
it's weird because right now I hear nothing at all, but I heard a few clicks and pops while I was
Oh, okay.
listening to you. So I just wanted to make sure we
Let,
weren't.
let, let me know, and then I'll just take off my my earphones
Oh, okay.
if that's the case.
Do you think maybe it's the earphones? It's possible.
Maybe
Okay.
if you hear it again, let me know, and I'll turn it off.
Okay, I'll tell you. But yeah, so far so good. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure we didn't go too off because this is a great conversation. I'm learning a lot, so I'm happy. Okay, so in that vein, then, how do people invest responsibly if they're going to invest in real estate, like as opposed to getting mortgages, getting loans that they are probably going to default on, or they're going to be over leveraged at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know you've talked about screening purchasers to like find out if the investment is actually right for them. Are there any general like guidelines a person might want to follow, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, you got to take a look overall. First, you have to screen a few things. So first, you have to screen the opportunities itself. You have to understand what the carrying costs are because the reality is there will be vacancies, and there might be, especially for active opportunities, there might be, tenant delinquencies, damages, like miscellaneous costs there. So you have to have like a reserve fund and the ability to have that and to carry the investment if there is some vacancy. So you need to have a few months of expenses saved. Um, as well on a purchaser standpoint, really like a lot of the time, Rick, it does boil down to who they are as investors. And speaking with an investment focused mortgage broker is a great start to understand what your qualifications are, what you're able to actually get a mortgage for, and what the carrying costs are going to be around. So you can then kind of gauge what's right and what's not. I try to recommend stomaching the least amount of expenses as possible, especially if it's your first investment. Dip your toes in the water. The don't jump because you can and put all your money into your first. Be conservative. Take slow steps towards building wealth because it will happen. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It is very a get rich slow, and that's kind of how I like my investments. Very very passive and very hands off, and just doing what it needs to do in the background. The other way to potentially shield against some of these market conditions, one being interest rates, is an approach called laddering your investment. And,
Hmm.
and what laddering your investment is, Rick, is fundamentally what you want to do as an investor is and this isn't just for real estate, this could be overall, is that you want to stagger the maturity dates or the payout dates of your investment. You don't want everything coming at the same time. Rick, you don't want, let's say you own your primary residence and an income property. You don't want the mortgage maturity date to be around the same time because look what happened, right? Like, let's say, for example, that same situation, you had a locked in rate at 2%, things are going great in your portfolio, but both the maturity dates are in, top of interest rates 2023. Now you have a liquidity issue. Now you went from, maybe $700 a month cash flow positive in your portfolio to negative, negative 700 on your income property. Plus now your primary residence costs more to hold, with your mortgage payments. So you want to stagger the maturity dates because it shields against market conditions as well. You can also add in some passive types of opportunities, ones where you don't need to get a mortgage for, and you can put them in between your maturity dates, those payouts. Those examples could be like private lending is one that a lot of people do. I personally am not against it, but I personally would say look at other private opportunities. REIT style investments and land development types of opportunities are great passive investments where you can put your money in. You don't have to get a mortgage, and that money's working for you in the background, which will help offset some potential turbulence in your active portfolio.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You know what? I might take a left turn a little bit here because I very like I of course I want to know about in real estate investment. This is awesome information. I feel like this conversation is better for me and I'm being kind of selfish, but
Hey, we're
there's
doing it for us.
we're doing it for us. We're doing it for us.
That's
You're
right.
right. We established this at the beginning. We established this at the beginning. It's just doing this for us. But the one of the things is I I saw you chatting again on the Jastakar podcast, and I really liked some of the things you had to say about values, about success, about
Yeah,
yeah, about just fears, failures, vulnerability, truth. I heard this a lot, and that inspired me. So I know that it's like, hey, this is the real estate guy. Let's talk about real estate. But at the same
let's
time,
shift it.
you're a human being, and I really like that side. Like, so one of the questions that I have is, we could probably blend the two together. Like, how do your what are your personal values, if you were to encapsulate some of the top values you have, and how does that blend into real estate and into
Yeah,
business in general? Because I think a lot of people think of business or investing and stuff as a, like, especially sales. If you feel like you're a person who's selling, which is everybody and who's doing any kind of business, but
yeah,
still, they think of it in a negative kind of way. I think sometimes, like, people do have a thing like, oh, it's a crooked salesman or something like this,
yeah,
and I
yeah. Like a snake oil salesman,
yeah, like a snake oil salesman,
right?
or that anything that's money based is almost bad sometimes. So I am curious of, like, yeah, okay, you've you're what are your values, and how does that relate to business and real estate in the first place?
And you hit the nail on the head, honestly, Rick, with that, because it is. It's not something that I deal with in regards to, am I doing the right thing? Because I just try to give people options. And to tell you the truth, I'm so far away from the results. Truly, I'm so far away from the results that what they choose is what they choose. I'm here just to give you the options. And if you choose option A or option B, I'll build the plan for you. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, that's fine. But that comes off of a value that I hold really true to my heart, which is I'm authentically myself. I will never ever be, that person that tries to push someone into an opportunity because I care about getting paid. And it's easy said than, it's easy said here, but the reality is that that's just who I am. And I've been able to, position myself in an organization where, I help investors and I help them grow, but my compensation is mostly is based off of the value I provide to them. I'm getting paid regardless if you buy or not. And I think that is a very unique position to be in compared to other sales professionals, is I was able to, because of who I am and not want I don't like thinking about overall when money comes in. That's me personally. So I've had to set expectations and boundaries, for my clients and for the organization I work with, which is this is who I am, this is what I want. If we want to move forward in building something, I'm very fortunate that I've done enough and we've built something around that. But truly, I'm here to provide you options, and if they don't work, let's try to find something that does work. And when it comes to other types of values that I've been grappling with lately, and that's why I actually love your content, Rick. So shout out, because I've been watching your shorts and watching your posts, and I've seen some of your interviews. So shout out, Rick. And if
Thank you.
anyone isn't subscribed and watching this, what are you doing? Subscribe.
Wow,
Come on.
this is a
Shout
glowing
out.
review. Thank you. You know what? I very rarely ever say it. I'm terrible at this. I think, in terms of doing that, like, subscribe, those things. I just don't say it. I'm like, you probably know, but I know people don't. But thank you for taking the step for me,
It's
because I
been
tend to
it's a
I tend to
yeah.
fail at that one pretty bad.
You, your content model is actually very unique, and it's one that I try to mimic myself, which is just don't set yourself in a niche for your discussions or your content pieces, and just try to work, try to just create a brand which is Rick or a brand which is Tyler. And that actually has been a vulnerability that I've been grappling with myself as creating content, because I've been doing interviews and podcasts and live discussions with thousands of my investors, and I've been on stage and speaking with people, but or speaking to groups, but I've never put it out with a personal branding touch. And the reason being is that there was a time that I'm still overcoming, that I feel like, a little bit more of like that imposter syndrome type of, type of discussion, because really I've built plans for investors and I've found a lot of success. But the reality is that I came from a family that has never owned real estate really, other than my grandfather. Renter dominated family, and I've had to grapple getting in and purchasing myself. Um, but never felt truly like I came from a position where I could put that out. And I've overcame it a little bit, and I've actually created a piece of content that talks about it, which, by the way,
So
actually, when you're talking about vulnerabilities, which now seems quite obvious now that I'm verbalizing it, but Rick, it's one of the hardest things to do. This is a lot easier to do than speaking about a personal vulnerability approach. I'm usually like a one take type of person, like, okay, good enough, put it up. And just because of a speed and efficiency, I think it's something that we need to do. But that vulnerability piece of content, which is what, 2 minutes? It
yeah.
took me like 20 takes, and it was wild. But yeah, so
Oh
I'm
wow.
overcoming that.
Back. So here's the thing. We had obviously some technical microphone issues and stuff like that. So I wanted to get back. So if the sound's a little bit different and people are hearing a different sound, that's what happened. Microphones are different. Technology is a whole thing. But we're back. We're doing this thing, and you were just talking about how what you're aiming to do is be as authentically you as possible. That includes setting the
Yeah.
boundaries at work, setting the boundaries with clients, setting the boundaries with how you're going to live your life, essentially. And one of the things about the thing that came up to me before we started playing around with the microphones was that I'm wondering how you mentioned you moved around a lot as a child. I also moved around a lot, so I kind of get that vibe. What are some of the tools or resources or people that you've used over the time to actually find out what is authentically you? And how have you been able to break through some of those walls you talked about, imposter syndrome or having your own doubts and fears? What are some of the tools, resources? What are some of the practices or people that you've looked up to? Anything in that realm that helps to bring down some of those walls that usually, like as a child, particularly if you move around a lot, you can have some walls up. You don't know what the new place,
Yeah.
the new people, it can be, you don't know exactly how to navigate, and you might build some of these walls. So how did you get to your authentic self? Or I assume it's an ongoing process, but how did
Oh yeah.
how'd you get to that stage?
Well, in regards to the authentic piece, one thing that I've had to leverage a lot just to see if I'm doing you know, if I am, helping people, I think is looking at, truly, if it comes to real estate investments, like, am I actually truly building the right plans to build them well? And I think the factor there is time. Just doing it enough and getting the practice into it and seeing the results happen. It's not like a stock, right? Where you're just in a week you can be up a lot or down a lot. It is a very long process, and as we spoke about before with those 4 ways to win through investing in active real estate, it's not everyone's wealth building or success can be seen the same. So it's just like having enough conversations, but also especially like moving around a lot and as a kid, just some of the things that a lot of kids go through, but that I went through is understanding, am I doing it to please somebody, or am I doing it truly for myself? And that's the part, Rick, that I really had to I've had to come to terms with it. Like it's okay to do things for other people, but am I doing it because I want to make them happy, or am I doing it because I want to truly help? These are things that I've had to try to overcome, especially like moving around a lot, having mom and dad live in separate places. These are things like, as a kid, you're just pleasing people, right? And you take some of that with you. And it's only now that I'm in my 30s that I've started to really realize that, which is that, am I in this role because I was just put there, and I just don't want to cause any, I don't want to rock the boat, or do I want to be here? And these are just questions that I've had to ask myself over time.
That's a really good point. Do I want to rock the boat, or do I actually want to be here? Or am I just trying not to rock the boat?
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
that
These are tough ones. These are tough things to, because it's like it's a fine line. Like it, if it's true or not, and really there's no right answer, and that's the tough one to understand.
no, for sure, for sure. I
Yeah,
mean, and so that wow, that sort of makes me think about being essentially like a leader of yourself at that point. You're kind of taking responsibility for your own choices, your own actions, as opposed to saying, well, you're externalizing it the other way, where you're saying they need this from me, so I guess I have to do this or something. Like you're
mm,
sort of saying, well, okay, no, what I need is this, and what would be best for probably both parties is something else, and it's not
yeah,
going to be fun in the moment. But so that makes me wonder about, so as a leader, I believe you have a family, right?
I do. Yeah, I
You
have
have
two beautiful daughters and a wife.
two daughters and a wife, and so you're so as a person who's essentially a leader of a family, that's like the first kind of leader I think we can be, but
Yep.
also a leader in business, in real estate. You're somebody who's putting yourself out there here on social media. um, what are some of your thoughts about responsibility and the responsibility of being a leader?
Mm. Well, when it comes to the family side, I've learned a lot. Like my kids are young, so they're 2 actually. My youngest Sawyer just turned 2, and they're it's a lot in those stages. A lot of internalizing, like just a self-reflection story of what are the things that you need to work on, what are the things that you're doing really well. And I think full disclosure that I'm doing the best that I can do, and I'm it's not that I'm beating myself up on over this, but it's good to reflect and try to grow. And um one thing that I thought, Rick, I had down pat, like that was my number one thing that I'm really good at, which is patience. I thought I was so patient, and I I have I have that down. But now having 2 kids that are under 4, I've realized that is something I have to work on, is patience. Um,
You're getting tested.
every day, every day, every day you're getting tested. You get tested at home more than anywhere else, which is great because I think they're also trying to see how someone they look up to acts, and I take that with full responsibility. Um, but at the end of the day, like I'm just trying to be a little bit better, for my kids, and I'm trying to I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to teach them that I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We have to take breaths and take a stop sometimes because we're feeling certain types of ways, and we move on and grow. And um, I think being a leader to the family is the hardest one, especially because you're not there all the time either. Especially being an entrepreneur, and I'm very fortunate that I before I had kids, I set limits on when I was working and when I wasn't working. Like even now, like if I have a call from a client at night, unless it's like something that it's completely like a burning question or something they really, really, really need at that moment, I don't look at my phone when I'm at home. So, it's just setting boundaries, and self-reflecting, and knowing that the person you were yesterday is not going to be the person you are today, and hopefully the person you are tomorrow is growth
Just trying to be
in that
better
direction.
incrementally. I notice you definitely have a pattern of, like whether it's investing, like, hey, this is a long-term story. It's going to get better over time. And you're not even going to really see as much of the changes day by day, but you're going to see the changes over sometimes. Like maybe tomorrow I'll be a little bit better than I was. Almost, there's a book called The Slight Edge that's a little bit about this, where
Mm,
essentially it talks about compound interest, but also how if you were reading, let's say if you were reading romance novels every day, or if you were reading some kind of non-fictional personal growth or business books every day, the trajectory of two people doing those two different things might
yeah,
shift. You're not going to see it day by day necessarily, but it is a daily action that shifts it. So I feel like
little
you're
by little.
you're getting more patient every day
And
with these
I
kids.
don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. I try to. And then like you've created, like you yourself, like through, and I'm asking you a question here.
Please.
I'm interested in your process because you've written things in the past, right?
Yes,
You've written stuff, you've created, but not illustrated, I believe. You've like created different pieces of work.
that's right.
So from an, I would consider you an artist. Like, I think writing is an art as well. Um, art professional, Rick. From a creative process, because that's something I'm trying to grow, like, and be more creative. From a creative process, how do you approach the beginning parts of creating a story or creating a world? Like, how would you approach that? Like, what are the questions you ask yourself?
Okay, yeah. This is the first part is a part I think that people get stepped up on. I have a fairly specific way to do this. And so you probably heard this before from other people, but the very first step is a non-judgmental step. You're going to have some kind of idea that you like, and maybe you'll write that down. Maybe you don't have ideas and you're trying to do something. It's different if you're doing there's two different ways to look at this. One is you've already got an idea and you're trying to get that idea to become something. Well, you're going to have to start where you are. So start writing. If you're writing, for example, start writing whatever it is. Okay, here's my guy. I want him to do this. He's a man. He's traveling from North America to Africa, and he's going to live in Africa, and I want to tell about his story there. Let's say that's what it is. So just start writing. Okay, John decides to sell his house and take a boat to Africa, and then this happens, that happens. Maybe it's crappy. Maybe the first thing you write is probably not going to be the best thing. Reserve the judgment and just do the work to begin with. That's my starting point when you're creating something. Reserve judgment. It's creative. You can't be beating yourself. Oh, well, that sentence is not that good. Well, let's not get into the sentence's structure right now. Let's not get into the characters, deepness right now. Get the work out, get it on the page, and then go back later with your judgmental hat. But creative hat and judgmental hat should be different to me. I find that helps. Don't judge it. Get it on the page. Now you've got a lump of clay to work with. Now you mold that clay into the shape you want it afterward. That to me tends to work. And it's similar. The second thing, the second process is very similar. You might not have any ideas. And you're saying, I don't have an idea. Well, then start writing about how you don't have an idea, or just start saying words. Say dog, cloud, rain. Write words down. And before long, you're going to say, well, there's a dog under a rain cloud. Now, hey, that became something. So that tends to be my method. Then build upon what you've already got.
So what I'm hearing is like you take a look at fundamentally, like you have a brain dump of sorts. You're not looking for clarity. What you're looking to do is truly just seeing what's there and just taking pieces out and then expanding. That's how you would approach that creation. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you take that approach with content creation as well?
I guess to some degree I do take a creative approach. Like I ran into you on social media at random. I saw what you were doing. I saw you talking about Batman. It's a real estate podcast and you're talking about Batman. So I was like, okay, I like this guy already.
Anyway, I could drop Batman in there,
so, like that's why that's okay. Anyway, what we will talk about Batman though, but it was any way that I can. So I'm like, okay, I'll talk to this guy. I'd like to talk to him. I don't know anything about real estate, and I'd like to know more. I think everybody probably should know more. That's another piece of this is that, hey, this podcast isn't, like you said, it's not a niche thing. We have a conversation. I talk to a guy who builds guitars. I talk to a woman who's a special effects artist. It's different jobs. And we tend to find through lines across people who are passionately creating whatever it is. So that's why. So I sort of do take that process. Like, who do I like here? Who do I want to actually talk to? And so I'm like, well, Tyler's here, and I like what he's talking about. He not only knows about real estate, but also knows about Batman. So this could be good.
Yeah, exactly.
So I started that way.
Wow. So it's actually, you do take it that approach, which is that you saw real estate and Batman. You didn't think about anything else. You're just like, real estate and Batman, let's unpack it a little bit. And, and that's what we have here. I love that approach, actually. That's,
it might seem a little crazy, but I've tended to have a lot of great conversations that way. I also stream on Twitch, and I've talked to something like 40 something streamers, who all do something completely different there. And it ends up kind of like that. Okay, I liked your stream. I like what you're doing. let's get this out there a little bit more. Let's have a conversation and see what happens. So it does seem
Love
a
it.
little bit random, but I have found somewhat my artistic process to be in that realm. Now how does that differ from how you would approach the way you work and your industry?
To to tell you the truth, what you just gave there, which is option one, which is the one you're talking about, the having an idea of a story and then expanding from it. Don't worry what's actually written. That's actually what and then building a plan for investments is actually, which is right where you are, right, a little idea of something you want to achieve through investing. Is it transitioning out of your 9 to 5 because you don't see yourself passionate there, and you want to build passion somewhere else, but you want to still be able to pay the bills. Is it wanting to go and renovate and build these beautiful architectural, like landscapes of sorts? Is that what you want to do? Is it having to provide this sustainable, but at the same time fair rental community where it's under market rents, but it's still fair because of what your projections are and how you're able to apply for certain grants? And whatever that is what I see. And then from there through and what you did in between the lines is you asked yourself the right questions through the artistic creation. And that's it. You just ask the right questions, and you just kind of be able to add a few little points that you can create a map for to get you to where that place is. And yeah,
That's
I
exactly
love
it.
it.
That's exactly it. It's honestly, it sounds pretty much the same. We
I
go, please.
I have one thing that I've been doing at home, like not a lot of, but I picked up through the pandemic, as many people picked up hobbies, is I have drawn a little bit. Like I've started to learn how to sketch, and I'm awful at it. But for the first time, Rick, a few months ago, I actually got lost in a drawing, and I've never had that type of experience before, where it's just like I put my head down and I started drawing, and a few hours later, it was something. And it was not great, but it was a really unique experience. And I take it, as a writer, you probably get that sometimes too, right? Where you just get lost in it. And I'm always like, I've had that, and I just try to chase that now. I'm just trying to find that, like, ways that I can just get really passionate about stuff and just getting lost in
It makes a lot of sense. Our hobby that we started was painting miniatures and creating miniature landscapes. Like there's games like Warhammer and D&D and
it. Yeah.
this type of stuff. So me and my wife have actually never played any of those games, but we thought it became because we wanted to do a game for our nieces and nephews, essentially, at Christmas, just because sometimes Christmas goes long and the kids don't have as much to do as you'd hope.
Yeah.
So we were like, well, why don't we make a game where we give them their stocking stuff for gifts as they play the game? And it started to just advance over time. And so then we just actually started painting miniatures as players for the game and this kind of stuff. And we could sit there forever. Just you're painting this little guy. And I didn't know I could paint, but apparently it's not as crazy as you'd think. You take one thing leads to another. Let's put it that way, right?
That's right. Yeah, you just little by little. And have you played Warhammer then? I've never played it. I've always just seen it, like this massive world.
Literally never played it, but I have now I've written the storyline and created like two different games. I'm on to a third one now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we actually printed out a board game and made the box and everything like that now this last year. Like we totally lost our minds. But no, you're right. Why are you aiming to chase this feeling, the getting lost in the thing? Like, what is it about it that you think is important?
You know what? It's that I've found passion, but I haven't found the passion. And I don't think you'll ever find that, even just speaking with people that are more established than I am and that have created these great companies and created great investment plan, all of that. They're always trying to change and add things to it. And that's, what I've come to terms with, which is, I just want to get lost in something. I want to really just, grow and start from the bottom and just really, I just love that part of it, which is, the exploration part of it. And, I'm this year specifically, like getting lost into something, like I'm really focused on like business systems. I just love it. I don't know why I do. I never knew I was a tinkerer until I started building these like CRM systems and automations and workflows, and I really love it. And now I've started to switch it now on to in regards to like the people that I work with, and how can we create efficiencies, and what are ways that we can remove some of these inefficient types of processes. And I love that, and I apply those types of like mindsets to everything I do, honestly.
That's awesome. I know you're running out of time. At this point, 'cause I know you have another thing really soon, so I won't keep you too much longer because I know we didn't get to talk about Batman.
But let's talk about a few minutes of comics. I love comics. So
Let's talk
do
about
it.
comics
Are
for a
you
few
a,
minutes.
I like anime too, so you can drop me whatever you like there.
No, that's good. I know. I'm thinking. Okay, you who. Let's. This is probably such a long conversation if we start it like this, but real quick, like summarize what was the first comic book that you remember reading that got you into it, got you hooked on it? What was the beginning point?
So I want to say the first one I really like got in and just like, wow, this is like an amazing, writing approach would probably be like Hush, Batman Hush. That one I got lost in, and it's really brought me to the Batman world. There's also an X-Men one, and it's been a few years since I read it. I had the anthology, so I had all the collection of the comics. I want to call it like X-Men Deadly Sins, maybe something like that, where it was about the original X-Men getting lost. Like, for example, like and then Charles Xavier bringing the second group of X-Men, one being Storm and Wolverine, to try and find them on the island, and then Cyclops losing his brother there, and then the brother coming back. So I forget what that one's called. Like, do you know the name of that one?
I can't recall. It's been a little while, right? This one,
but I would say
that
like
not
first,
Genosha, but they're on the bad.
Yeah, they're on that
Savage Land.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I would say the first like real one where I was like, whoa, okay, really, I really like comics, and I got into the stories behind them, and a few other characters, but it had to have been Batman, and Hush is being the one that really is in my mind right now. I love that one.
Is Batman, would you say, your favorite character then? Or do you have a favorite character?
I think so. If you asked me like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I would say for sure yes. But now it's more, I just kind of like the story behind them now. I don't really care who the superhero is. But I would say Batman is the one that I've read the most.
Batman's
and like
the one you
looked
read the
at.
most.
Yeah, like I've consumed the most in regards to the movies and the animated movies, DC wise. DC hasn't made the greatest, of the Justice League type of Avenger approach, but some of them are good. Especially the DC animated movies are top notch.
They tend to be fantastic. They're some of the best ones because, like for Batman specifically, there's quite a bit. Like they have the Batman Returns series.
Yeah,
it's an animated series. It's fantastic. Obviously, the live action Batman versus Superman is not a good reflection of that necessarily, but
I thought it had good points though. That movie, like there was some good parts, but they completely threw the ending with like the whole Lex Luthor thing. It was like it wasn't that it didn't get put together, but there were some really good scenes in that movie.
They did have some good scenes. There was a few good scenes. I know people work hard. I know they try to in films and stuff. They're trying to, maybe it's what we've been talking about this whole time. They're thinking maybe a little too much about the audience or externalizing and saying statistically this is what people probably want to see, and maybe they miss the point on some of that stuff. But I know people work pretty hard on these movies.
You could probably say that in general for superhero movies. Like, we're seeing a lot of volume right now, and for me, for some reason, I've been so turned off of, like, I love Star Wars. I've been turned off from anything after Mandalorian. I haven't watched. Anything with Marvel, honestly, like you might say, oh my God, I can't believe you haven't seen this, but I haven't seen anything from Marvel since Infinity War. After that, I haven't seen a single thing from Marvel.
Me too.
Other than the Immortals. Was that the one with Angelina Jolie?
I guess I didn't watch it.
The Immortals.
I didn't see it either.
That one was pretty good, actually. I'd recommend that one, but I haven't seen anything. And I think what it is for me is that I'm obviously not the target market, but it's just trying to paint a broad stroke and trying to catch everybody. It's just I just don't like that type of storytelling. I just like be niche, be hyper niche with that. It'll attract you'll attract your herd, right? You really will.
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you
Yeah.
on that.
Who's your favorite superhero?
Whew, okay. Um, Oddly, if it's odd, again, it's difficult to say because mostly if I read comics today, I read a lot of creator owned stuff, so it's just
Oh,
an
nice.
offshoot story. But
And where do you
um,
find that?
well, like it's still not it's not that underground because I tend to go with writers like Rick Remender. He wrote a lot of X Force and X-Men stuff back in the day, and then he's created a lot of his own incredible comics. A lot of them are movies now as well, so it's not just that. So you can find it at comic book store or even on
Oh,
Amazon
okay.
and stuff as well. Like they're big guys. They just make their own thing. They're like, okay, here's a story that just I did. It's not Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's not whatever.
Yeah.
So
You,
that
you don't have a lot of you need to hit this type of point.
that's it. You
It's full creativity.
exactly. You tend to get the story that was directly from the. That's what I like about comics in the first place. Is generally the ideas tend to be a little off the wall, and you don't
Yeah.
often see them in movies and stuff. Sometimes they don't translate to movies very well. So I like that. Whereas if it's a superhero comic these days, I feel like it's still sort of they're expecting to make a movie that has this storyline in it, and so it becomes sort of similar. But I would
Yeah.
say it's odd, but I think I like there's a character called Supreme. Which was most of the time not written that well. Those comics were not that good. It's from the 80s or 90s. I think it came out, but Alan Moore did a run of Supreme
Okay.
and had all this like existential psychological stuff in it, which was pretty cool. It's just this. It's a play on the Superman type character, So
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
I tend to like very very powerful characters, and
Did he
of
do
course
Kingdom? Did he
Batman's
do
great.
Kingdom Come?
Yes. No. Well,
No, Kingdom.
Alan Moore
Is
and
that?
it was Alex. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Kingdom Come is fantastic.
Yeah. Super
That's
good.
a okay. So those types of stories I like more now, like the cause and effect type of stories.
Yeah.
You know, you see other points of views. Like sometimes you can see why Lex Luthor, had his reservations against supers. It's like these are gods. These are gods trying to decide what regular humans can and can't do, and fundamentally there's problems there, right? And that's great. Another good one's Booster Gold. You ever read any of his?
Wait. Say again.
This is a Justice League. Booster Gold.
Oh. Okay. Maybe.
Justice League. He's like he's from the future, but he comes to the present,
Yeah.
and those ones are funny, like those types of stories.
Insanely good. Insanely good. And so yeah, no, I do like that. I think they're a little tougher to do sometimes, like in terms of writing, because we all love Batman because we can kind of get into the headspace of okay, this is what happened to him. This is his circumstances, and this is his reaction to that. It's a little easier
Yeah,
to
you
understand.
can
So
pick it up anywhere. Yeah, that's right. Wow, that's a really good point. Because what you just said there was really really unique, because the problem with some of these unique creations that you have to start from the beginning, and starting from the beginning, sometimes people don't want to, because now they're in it for the long haul. And it's a reason why I've been holding, like I'm a big anime guy. Like I would say, like if you ask me anime questions, I would know that a lot more than
wow.
superhero stuff.
Okay.
And yeah, I love anime. Anime is great. I just like the Japanese writing approach of times, like
It's very
very
cool. Sometimes super psychological.
very intricate, right? They gotta explain everything. And sometimes, there's no context with Japanese writing in times. Like they literally, there's not like read between, you can understand without having to explain everything. And sometimes it's too much, but I like it as well because there's intricate storylines that sometimes gets brought out. But there was an anime that Netflix just did a live adaptation to, which is called One Piece.
Yeah.
One Piece is one of the longest running mangas. There's over 1,000 episodes, and I love anime, but I held off from watching One Piece until like 3 years ago, and I'm still trying to get through it. I'm on episode like 800 of 1,000, and the reason why is that I didn't want to do the marathon. I just wanted something small, easy, but I'm happy I did because it's a really good story.
those stories build too. Like that's the thing with One Piece. I was like, okay, what is this, a kids show or whatever? Like I was watching everyone telling me to watch it. Then it built pretty quickly, and I got the picture. We could go on about this for a long time. Like I've been to Japan 7 times, and I actually
that's I've been
Japanese.
Once. Oh, nice! Wow, great.
Yeah,
well, we can definitely talk about some other stuff. Maybe podcast number 2.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about it again because I know you're late, but you know, I think you have something else happening right now. It's just too bad, but yeah, no, you actually hit the nail on the head completely with that. Japanese is a lot about context, so they just sort of say, okay, well, you can see what's happening, right? Like they have a thing called kuki o yomu, which means read the air. It's kind of like just read the room and see what's happening, and nobody needs to tell you, right? Like so. Yeah. It's a lot like that. Okay, look.
Yeah, it's great. And maybe we could tie it off with the business approach, which is sometimes maybe why people don't want to become entrepreneurs is that they don't want to start at the beginning. And if I could give anybody advice, start at the beginning, because that's the best way to create an authentic brand and an authentic business anyways.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Wrap that up. Tie that up.
You killed it. You're fantastic at this, man. Thank you for dealing with some of the issues and stuff we had too. It's been great to have you here. And I'm going to put all of your links, of course, below in the description and tag you and everything that's here. So everybody, please follow Tyler. And you person who's watching right now, follow Tyler right now. This is really great. I love what you're doing. I'm happy to see what you and REC Canada and Jazz and everybody. You guys are awesome. You really inspired me, and this conversation was great. So thanks for bearing with me on this and coming. I hope we can chat again. We'll talk about anime and comic books more, I guess.
And if someone has been listening to us this whole time and has not subscribed to your podcast or followed you on Instagram or followed you on YouTube, what are we doing? Follow Rick. Come on.
That's crazy, man. Thank you for the threats.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for the threats. I appreciate you very much.
I will find you.
Oh, okay. So
thanks, Rick.
It just took a turn. This is the Batman side of things.
We'll cut it off. We'll cut it off now.
We'll cut it off.